collision between two trains in the southern Czech Republic left 5 people seriously injured and dozens with minor injuries. US President Donald Trump signed a bill approving the release of the case files on convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
At least 25 people were killed, including 3 children, as Russian missiles targeted residential sites in the western Ukrainian city of Ternopil overnight into Wednesday.
All 267 passengers and crew on board a large ferry were rescued after it ran aground on rocks off of South Korea's coast. 2 trains collided in the southern Czech Republic, leaving 5 people seriously injured and dozens with minor injuries. Czech Railways confirmed the collision involved 2 of its trains during morning rush hour, when services typically carry commuters heading to work. 7 rescue crews and a helicopter responded to the accident scene.
Máme informace o tom, že ve vlacích dohromady cestovalo na 5 desítek osob, z toho 3 desítky osob byly zraněny, ať už těžce nebo lehce, a byly převezeny do nemocnic v Českých Budějovicích a v okolních městech.
An investigation into the cause of the crash is underway. However, local media reported that one driver may have run a signal prohibiting travel. Both trains allegedly spotted each other from several hundred meters away, but were unable to stop in time. The railway line now remains closed pending completion of the investigation and cleanup efforts. US President Donald Trump signed a bill approving the release of the case files on convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The Department of Justice now has 30 days to release files regarding investigations into Epstein, as well as his longtime partner and accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell. The bill also calls for the release of the files related to Epstein's death in prison. But still, some exemptions apply. The Department of Justice may, for example, withhold personally identifiable information about victims and information that the administration considers classified. The move comes after Trump long opposed to make the files public, after it was suggested that he may personally be implicated. However, pressure from both political opponents and within his own party grew, pushing him to provide greater transparency regarding the files. Trump has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing, claiming to have cut ties with Epstein years ago.
A culture of fear is taking hold in Chicago, with many too scared to leave their homes over immigration raids, where ICE officials emerge from unmarked vehicles to confront and detain undocumented migrants. In social media posts and interviews, many have expressed shock at the agents' use of force.
Get off of me! My brother, obviously, he didn't want to get caught, so because he was illegal. So he started running. That's when multiple came out the cars and they tackled him to the ground. And that's where I chased behind them.
For nearly 2 months, federal agents have been carrying out the surprise raids in Chicago in pursuit of the Trump administration's immigration agenda. In addition to people who were in the country illegally, many U.S. citizens have also been swept up in the crackdown.
It was also very hurtful seeing other people getting caught in the crossfire, because they didn't have nothing to do with it, and all of them have citizenship.
Being a Mexican American, I feel like a whole bunch of weight on my shoulders of what can we do to help each other.
Since it began in early September, Operation Midday Blitz has resulted in more than 3,300 arrests, according to attorneys for detainees.
All these walls have got to go.
Hundreds gathered in Raleigh to demonstrate against federal agents expanding their immigration crackdown in North Carolina.
From Palestine to Mexico.
The operation began over the weekend in the state's largest city, Charlotte, where officials said more than 130 people have been arrested. Federal officials said the crackdown served to reduce crime. However, officials in both Charlotte and Raleigh testified that crime rates were already down. Meanwhile, Pope Leo XIV strongly backed U.S. bishops who condemned the Trump administration immigration crackdown.
No one has said that the United States should have open borders. I think every country has a right to determine who and how and when people enter. But when people are living good lives, and many of them for 10, 15, 20 years, to treat them in a way that is extremely disrespectful, to say the least, and there's been some violence, unfortunately, I think that the bishops have been very clear in what they said, and I think that I would just invite all people in the United States to listen to them.
Last week, U.S. Catholic bishops gathered and issued a special pastoral message. The text criticized the mass deportation of migrants and the, quote, vilification of them in the current migration debate.
At least 25 people were killed, including 3 children, in Russian missile attacks on the western Ukrainian city of Ternopil overnight into Wednesday. The country's emergency services said that 73 others were injured, with an early report suggesting that over a dozen of those were minors. Local officials say 2 9-story residential buildings were struck by heavy Russian projectiles, including ballistic missiles. One of the buildings caught fire, while the other sustained extreme damage, which completely destroyed it from the 9th floor all the way down to the 3rd. Ukraine's Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko slammed the Kremlin for its attacks, calling them a deliberate attempt to target the civilian population. The attacks came as President Volodymyr Zelensky touched down in Ankara on Wednesday to meet with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan, a visit which aims to relaunch diplomatic talks with Russia to end the war. Moscow has significantly increased its aerial bombardment of Ukraine in recent months, targeting everything from military to energy and civilian positions, despite the mounting pressure and global calls to re-engage in peace efforts.
Europe is trying to rearm fast, but is lacking qualified people to design or produce the volume of material needed. To meet this challenge, the European Commission on Wednesday proposed an upskilling plan as part of its defence industry transformation roadmap. The EU says it wants 600,000 people to be upskilled or reskilled for the defence industry by 2030. Andrius Kubilius, the European Commissioner for Defence, told Euronews that the measures aimed to upskill around 12% of the existing defence and aerospace workforce each year. This shortage is a problem for both the supply side, where disruptive technologies such as AI and quantum are being developed for defense applications, and the demand side, where armed forces and procurement bodies need expertise to quickly acquire and integrate these new systems. In 2023, the EU defense industry generated around 581,000 jobs and a turnover of 158.8 billion euros.
The Lithuanian government announced that it's reopening the country's 2 border crossings with Belarus on Wednesday. It comes weeks after they were closed following disruptions at the capital's airport caused by balloons used to smuggle cigarettes across the border. Vilnius said late last month that it would keep the borders closed for 1 month, with some exemptions. Officials in Lithuania viewed the balloon violation as a deliberate act by Belarus, a close ally of Russia. The decision is expected to ease the return of hundreds of Lithuanian trucks, which have been trapped in Belarus since the closure came into force. Minsk refused to open a corridor to allow the Lithuanian trucks passage back home and opted to hold them as a means of pressuring Lithuania into reopening the crossings. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko slammed Vilnius' decision to close the border crossings as a mad scam, as he accused Lithuania of engaging in a, quote, hybrid war against his country. Lithuania warned that the crossings could be shut again if balloons and drones reappear in its airspace.
The European Commission has unveiled its digital omnibus, a proposal to cut red tape on artificial intelligence, cybersecurity and data to boost innovation and competitiveness in the EU.
Overall, we estimate that digital omnibus could result in at least 1 billion euros in annual savings for our businesses, public administrations and citizens. and it also would generate some 1 billion euros of one-off savings.
The Commission's proposal aims to simplify the AI Act and the GDPR, two key EU legislations which respectively regulate artificial intelligence and protect data privacy. The digital omnibus also looks to simplify the reporting of cybersecurity incidents. In addition, it would reduce cookie banner pop-ups and allow users to indicate their cookie preferences with just one click. Nevertheless, adoption of the omnibus might not be straightforward. Many members of the European Parliament spanning the left and centre have already stated their intention to oppose it.
It absolutely feels like the European Commission is just bowing down for, well, tech bros and their top lobbyist, Donald Trump. They are already for years trying to make sure we reopen the tech legislation that we have in Europe, the tech legislation that actually sets us aside because we make sure we have safe, privacy-friendly and environmentally friendly systems in the EU.
The digital omnibus is just the first step. The European Commission has also launched the digital fitness check to identify which digital rules can be further simplified.
All 267 passengers and crew on board a large ferry were rescued after it ran aground on rocks off South Korea's southeast coast late on Wednesday. A preliminary report reveals that the ship had been sailing through a section that requires manual navigation. The helmsman, however, failed to switch from autopilot, apparently due to being distracted by his phone. South Korea's Coast Guard are investigating the crash and have arrested 2 people for suspected gross negligence.